Like and subscribe right now, or else this will be in your bed tonight. r/AskReddit by Reddit Universe. What's the scariest dream you had and can still remember it? A terribly realistic dream I had of my family, myself, and a family we know being sent to concentration camps. The logic in it was absolutely perfect. Everything had a why and a how, and there was absolutely nothing that was wonky. Therefore, my brain read it as reality whenever I tried to wake up. It wasn't over the top, just human cruelty taken to its chilling logical extreme. Nothing indicated that it was a dream until my mother woke me up. I was late in 8th grade, and even then I wasn't sure what was real and what wasn't for a few moments. The only good thing is that it ended with my mother and I alive. Everything else makes it easily the worst dream I ever had. I just had this last week and it still terrifies me. In the dream, my wife told me how sad she was dropping off our daughter at her new parents' house. We had agreed that we would give our daughter away once she turned 1 year old. I didn't get a chance to say goodbye or even remember making this agreement. That was the worst feeling. Thomas the Tank Engine pushing me down the stairs. Never will I forget that. Many years ago, I had split with my husband. I remained living in our flat, which was on the ground floor. He had a habit of dropping round, making smarmy remarks, picking fights, asking for money. We had fought. I had kicked him out, but I hadn't changed the locks. Anyway, a blind toddler could have burgled that flat. My bedroom was at the back of the flat and had doorways with no locks on either side, which led through to the kitchen and further on into the living room. I was quite sick and bedbound for a couple of weeks when I had this dream. It was a horrible dream. I was being chased. I was running and running. I could feel my pursuer getting closer and closer. So terrifying. I screamed and woke myself. I was kind of woozy and made myself get up and walk through to the kitchen and make some tea. I definitely didn't want to fall back to sleep and dream the same dream again. I was feeling fragile and alone. The flat was dark. I was leaning with my hands on the kitchen counter waiting for the kettle to boil when I was grabbed from behind. It was my husband. He had wrapped one arm around me, pinning both my arms tightly against my body. "You freaking bitch," he said. Then he plunged a huge kitchen knife down and into my chest. Then I really freaking screamed at the top of my lungs, and there I was in my bed, scared stiff, upright in the dark, totally alone. I just started taking Chantix, a smoking cessation medication that is known for causing vivid dreams. I have had dreams the past 4 nights that were very interesting, but my scariest dream was just after my first son was born. I opened my eyes. My wife was curled up next to me. I remember she was topless, with the blanket pulled up to her collarbones, covering her breasts. The sun was just peeking above the horizon, and the light was hitting her just right. I kissed her on the cheek and went downstairs to make coffee. I put the coffee in the filter, added water to the coffee maker, and leaned back against the counter and I breathed in deeply. I let out a contented sigh, then stretched my arms up to the sky. Then, I heard an air raid siren. I looked out the window and I could see the sprawling military base in the early morning sunlight. Other on-base houses going on in neat little rows for as far as I could see. I could see the chain link fences surrounding the base. The air raid siren stopped and a booming voice said, "Attack imminent. Do not open your doors. Stay inside." Just then, my wife came down the stairs, holding our infant son in her arms. She sleepily asked me what the noise was. I couldn't answer. I was still looking out the window, and off in the distance I saw a huge crowd of people moving towards the fence. I just stood there with my mouth open as they got closer and closer. They made it to the fence, and some climbed over. Others kept punching against the fence. I watched as 3 of them came upon a neighbor from up the street doing some early morning gardening. They surrounded my neighbor, and I remember watching them rip him apart, then start eating him. I turned to my wife and told her we needed to get to the garage and get in the car. She took our son to the garage and grabbed shoes for me and her. As I opened the door to the garage, I could hear screams and pounding on the house and the garage door. I started the car, and just as I was about to ram through the garage door, the people smashed their way in. They were all over the car. They smashed the passenger window and took my son. Another grabbed my wife and bit into her neck, just above the collarbone. I looked up to see one of them bite into my son's belly. I woke up making a strange noise, gasping for air and trying to scream at the same time. I am not military and I have never lived on a base, but I sure as shit did in that dream. They were zombies. I've had numerous zombie dreams before that were terrifying, but they had always focused on me dying. This was the first time I had felt that sheer sense of panic for someone else's well-being in a dream. My dad was in the shower, stapling his fingers. Very eerie. I dreamed of killing a guy I was friends with before. We didn't fight or anything, just lost touch. It was so real, I buried him in the neighborhood and was freaking out, because I was afraid that I get caught. Waking up in the morning I was terrified and called him. He answered the phone and obviously was pretty surprised that I called him. At least, it made his day. Being tied down and having my skin ripped off of me. My aunt having a seizure. Happens 2 weeks later. Worms crawling through, under my flesh, breaking though my skin and crawling in, and out of the empty holes in my legs and arms. Intestines bursting out of my stomach and onto the floor, blood everywhere. Being shackled to a wall and veins being pulled out of my body. There's a lot more. I don't really want to get into too much detail. I'm a big fan of The Simpsons. I quote it all the time and can do some of the voices. The scariest dreams I seem to have involve watching The Simpsons, and in these dreams the animators, writers have become incredibly psychotic, and all the episodes feature hellish imagery, with characters being killed and tortured. I spend most of these dreams trying to avoid looking at the TV, but you know how dreams are. It wasn't outright scary, so I might disqualify myself here. But I remember years ago when my cell phone ended up falling off of my bed and tumbling underneath a pillow that was laying on the ground. The result was an alarm just loud enough for me to hear while I was in my dream, but not loud enough for me to actually wake up from the dream. And it was one of those incessant buzzer alarms that I ended up having to change. I was so traumatized by this. The result was me running around in my apartment in my dream smashing things and trying to locate the noise to make it stop. In my dream, it felt like I was doing this for hours and hours. Desperately trying to quiet the alarm, but not being able to. It was terrible. I'm happy this particular alarm sound is no longer used much anymore. It gets to me that much till this day. When I was like 4, I woke up to the silhouette of the Chucky doll in my doorway with a fork and a knife. He looked at me and said time for lunch with a smirk, so I hastily looked down at the Ben 10 watch on my wrist, and transformed into that speedy blue, black dude, can't remember his name, and ran downstairs to my parents' room and hid under their covers. There were 2 that I distinctly remember. The 2005 Bionicle Twahodika line was trying, and failing, to fend off an endless wave of robot spiders with the head of Carl Sagan, and I was stuck in the middle of it all. I was wandering through the upstairs hall of my house, and then I got jumped by a guy running out of a dark room. He was short like 5 feet 4 inches ish, visibly muscular, tan, had grey curly hair in the same style as Weird Al Yankovic's, was wearing all black, including a black do-rag, and an "I'm gonna frick you up so badly" look on his face. I woke up right as he was about to collide with me. Mine would be this. Standing in my living room, looking out the window, and I see a nuclear bomb go off near the horizon. I lived with 2 of my sisters, so I started to run around the house, telling them what had happened. After a minute or so, we felt the blast wave go through us, and we thought the worst was over. Then another bomb went off, this time a little closer. The blast wave hit us sooner, and I remember my skin feeling like I had horrible sunburn. I thought to myself, this is probably what it feels like to be in a microwave. We lived on a cul-de-sac, and our neighbor and 2 of his sons were standing in the road. We walked up to them as another nuclear bomb went off within a few miles of us, and I looked at the neighbor and said, "When are they gonna stop?" He hauntingly responded, "When we're all dead." Then the blast wave hit us, and the dream was over. That dream still bothers me, and I dreamt it over a year ago. So vivid, and the pain I felt was unique. Very creepy. I used to sleep with a nightlight with a plastic green Christmas tree decorative cover over it. And one day I had a dream it grew and became Shrek and ate me. When I was little I was having a normal dream of me being in my school just freaking around. All of a sudden my whole vision goes static and a dead polar bear's head appears saying nothing is real. Then I get teleported to my room with my door open and hearing loud footsteps coming towards me and I couldn't move. But I woke up in time before I got jump scared. That dream made me have my first existential crisis. I've had a lot of terrible, scary dreams. A lot of night terrors as a kid. Being murdered, raped, just the usual. I grew out of it mostly. Found out my triggers. Chocolate before bed is one. Gives me crazy vivid dreams. Recently though I had a dream that has somehow scarred me in real life. My uncle announced they were having another baby, which honestly was whatever. We go on a wacky adventure to visit except we get there, and we find out there are complications. The baby is dying. Everyone is visiting this tiny baby. It barely moves and is almost like some puppet. It was stiff and incredibly still. Eventually, they pressure me into holding the baby. Its stiff, lifeless eyes looking back at me. I really did not want to be touching it. I turn to bring the baby back. My excuse being my aunt should spend time with it before it passes. Someone's foot shoots out and trips me. I wrap my arms around the baby as I fall, trying to fall on my back. Except I can't. Instead, the baby clips the side of the coffee table and my arms at least cushion it from the ground. Except it doesn't. The baby's head explodes across the room. I'm covered in brine juice. The baby is dead. Parts of his broken skull are flung around the room, and the brain skitters across the floor. There should have been no reason for its head to explode like that. I panic and try to bring it back, but everyone is screaming at me. I killed the baby. My uncle is screaming. I murdered their baby. I start to cry and gather the broken baby parts in my arms. Its body now soft and limp. The blood everywhere. The smell is horrible. No one moves to do anything. I just gather the pieces up while they scream and chide me. Then I woke up. As a child I dreamed the ceiling fan in my room detached and flew away and my dad was pissed. It's funny now, but as a kid it was scary for some reason. Somebody in my dream said, "Hey, you're dreaming. If you imagine the devil, you'll see him." And I turned to my couch and there he was. A dark figure with volcanic-like skin and the most haunting eyes. I woke feeling like I'd just woken up from a 20-year coma. It was awful. A clown taking out my intestines with a crochet hook. Not sure how this dream came around. I once dreamt my grandmother and I committed suicide by drinking poisoned orange juice. I woke up sobbing. It's not exactly realistic, but it really stuck with me for a while. I was in space in the future, in a completely alien environment. I was some sort of astronaut and as I was exploring I found some sort of witch or something and she told me that she was stuck there and needed a specific item to leave. I agreed to get it for her and she gave me specific directions along the line of there is a pocket dimension over there and you can only leave it when the light from the sun is directing into it. You have to go in and smash object. I went into the dimension. It looked like a small black hole, but 2D, and didn't see any object. I heard her cackling. I looked back and realized that the dimension was built so that the sun would never shine in it. I panicked, filled with a deep sorrow and existential dread. Then I woke up in a cold sweat. Everything was white. Like a room with no doors or windows. You couldn't tell how big the room was either. I imagined that I was in a space of some kind. In the center sat a little girl. She was turned away from me so I couldn't get a good look at her. She had white hair while her skin was pale like a sheet. I walked up to her. I was about to put my hand on her shoulder and then suddenly grabbed by my arm. She turned and I saw her face. Her eyes were like oxen white, no white at all. Like eye sockets covered completely by her pupils. She smiled and showed her fang-like teeth at me. Then said, and I quote, "You'll be damned like the rest of us." Then I woke up. Still can remember clear as day. I was in the house I grew up in, and the lights were off. I was just kinda with my parents talking about whatever and these two girls came running out of the kitchen. They just had skin where their eyes should have been. They were holding knives, and I only had a remote control. I pressed the off button and one fell down, but the other one was still coming, like sprinting at me. I had to run while turning around and pointing the remote at her while she was on my heels the whole time. She chased me up the stairs and stopped after I finally hit the off button correctly. I was going back down the stairs when I saw the other one running back up the stairs at breakneck speeds. That's when my girlfriend woke me up. Apparently I made a very upset noise in my sleep and she figured I was having a bad dream. Frick that dream. I dreamt our dog died and I had to tell my girlfriend. I am not ready for this. 3. When I had braces. Looking in the mirror and noticing some were loose. Then I snapped off a section of 4 teeth, held together still by braces. It didn't hurt, but it bled. And I was freaking mortified. So in my anxiety, I tested each other quadrant if 4 front-facing teeth, which broke off, with braces attached, just as easily. 2. That I forgot I had a particular class all semester and never went until it was too late so I wasn't going to graduate. Apparently this one is super common too. What the frick kind of pressure do they instill on us? I used to get night terrors all the time and wake up screaming, but not remember my dreams. Also many times my body would be locked and I would hear what can only be described as dark mumbling when I woke up trying to fight it. In one of these, I actually managed to remember a bit, and I just started screaming numbers. It's all numbers. Just numbers. While my parents tried to calm me down. The last thing I remember was a sea of Matrix-looking representations of the shape of the United States and a fear, a freaking dread, that I messed up everything. Like, everything. My life was over. I would go to jail forever. I ruined everything. Pure horror and dread. Don't know how my brain got there. Probably just processing some normal kid stuff. But it's the scariest dream I've ever had. The one where we were abducted by aliens and they melt in the face off of Dean. I was trapped in an infinitely expanding white room and there's a door. Every time I go closer to the door it goes further away. I end up crying and laying on the floor screaming even though I am not making a sound until it ends. I get this about 2 times a month. It ruins me for the whole day when I have it. Bigfoot was hunting me and trying to kill me. He killed my twin brother on our childhood playground along with half my classmates. Very graphic. I was little so it freaked me out for a while. From some reason I still remember this dream I had when I was like 5 years old. I was in my kindergarten class when suddenly everyone started running. When I reached the outside of the school I tripped and the headless horse rider stabbed right in the heart. I don't even know where that dream came from. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more videos every day.